Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of Season 1 of Game of Thrones. Now, this is another show that, just like The Sopranos and Breaking Bad, I didn't really get around to watching until recently. Just never really wound up on my watch list. I think with Game of Thrones, I was leery of it because of what I had heard about the last two seasons. So I was like, well, I don't know if I want to invest that much time into this show only to watch it completely destroy itself by the end. But I had picked up the show on 4K, so it was definitely something that I was eventually going to get around to watching. But I only really did that because I was requested to watch the pilot episode by Kevin. But I decided to go one step further and watch the entire first season. So here we are. Season 1 of Game of Thrones is a show that is based on the novel by George R.R. Martin called A Song of Ice and Fire. In fact, the entire series is based on a series of novels by George R.R. Martin. Now, David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, they were really well known for their film work. They had worked on a ton of movies, maybe not a ton, but at least a decent slate of films prior to Game of Thrones. And they had had success with the film industry. But they were big fans of George R.R. Martin's novels, and they really wanted to do a TV show. They wanted to do an adaptation of the series by George R. Martin. And they actually went as far to contact George and talk to him, which I think they had to anyway in order to be able to get permission to make the show. But they still really took the time to get his thoughts and to get his blessing in person. And what won George over was the way that DB and David answered certain questions that George had. And it really made him feel like, okay, these guys, they're the right people to adapt my novel because I like what they are saying. It sounds like they know what they're talking about. And they're not only fans of my work, but they have the right concept of how this is going to work as a TV series. The show features a massive cast and crew. I mean, the main cast is very long, but it also features a lot of other supporting cast members. And all I got to say about the performances from this season is some are better than others, I will admit. But for the most part, the performances are pretty consistently good from all of these performers, whether it's the main cast or the supporting cast or the characters or the cast members who just kind of appear here and there throughout the season. It stars Sean Bean as Ned Stark, and in my opinion, is easily some of his best work as an actor. Uh, he is just so good in this in terms of his physical acting, his ability to showcase, the sternness and the stoicism and the just very strong qualities of his character, as well as his stubbornness, but also his heart. And the moments with him and his kids where he's letting his guard down, he's smirking, he's smiling, so on and so forth. He was a very strong father figure, but also a very strong leader. It was a really good performance by him. And the rest of the cast is, for the most part, on the same level. Mark Addy is a big surprise in this as Robert Baratheon, King Robert. Because Mark Addy, prior to Game of Thrones, he was known as a comedy guy. He was, in a lot of ways, kind of like Kevin James. He's like the fat funny guy who you cast in a sitcom. Yeah, as the fat funny guy. Like he was a sitcom actor. He was a comedian. That was what Mark Addy was known for prior to Game of Thrones. I mean, he's the same guy who was Fred Flintstone and the Flintstones, Viva Rock Vegas. You know, that's what he was known for. He's Still Standing. That was his big thing. Still Standing. You know, the sitcom. Um, Having role in that, and then after Still Standing, he wound up getting Game of Thrones, and it really shifted people's perspective of him as an actor, and for a good reason, because he was really good in this. He showcased a significant amount of range here as Robert Baratheon, who was a very jovial character at points, but also a character who was very withdrawn and very intense. And Addy was able to portray all those aspects of that character very well. Uh, Nikolaj Coster-Waldau, he played Jamie Lannister, and he was just a perfect combination of good looks and cockiness and bravado, and the kind of guy who reminds you of Prince Charming from Shrek. But it really is a good a fit for this character, because very much so his character is a lot like that character. But if that character could actually fight with a sword and had a mean streak. And then you have Michelle Fairley, who plays Caitlin Stark, Ned's wife. She was able to portray her own strength in a different way, in a way that definitely showed some more vulnerability at points. That was more evident, more clear than what Sean was bringing to his role, because Sean was definitely more inside himself. Her emotions were definitely more in the open, but she was also equally believable when it comes to the moments where she is utilizing her other talents and her other abilities to showcase um, other nuances of her character, like her own intensity, her own way of showcasing her anger and her angst when it comes to uh, what the Lannisters ultimately wind up doing to her husband and to her family. And then you have Lena Headey, who played Cersei. She is such a conniving, cunning bitch. Like, just the kind of character that you hate, but in a good way. I think it's really messed up, though, that there are people who still to this day just have this hatred for Lena because she played Cersei and did such a good job playing this character. It's like, give her a break. She's just playing a character. You don't need to hate Lena Headey for playing such a despicable, evil queen. Like, it's not who she is. That's just a character that she played. Uh, so she's gotten a lot of heel heat, so to speak, throughout the years for her performance in this. And it's a really great performance by her. She does a great job playing a villain. And Emilia Clarke, she's kind of there for me as Daenerys. She's got a really good look to her. And I do think that she commands the screen and has a good presence. And she's definitely really nice to look at. But her line delivery is just kind of uneven throughout this season. And I'm not the only one. There are other people who have pointed that out. I've heard that she gets better as she goes along, the further the show continues. And I definitely want to see what she is able to bring to the show after this. But compared to some of the other actors and actresses here, definitely one of the weaker performances. And I kind of feel the same way about Kit Harington, to be honest, as Jon Snow. His line delivery is kind of uh, uh, uneven as well. It's not always on the same level. But overall, I thought his performance was fine. But it wasn't something that I felt was on the same level as Sean Bean or Michelle Fairley or Lena Headey, or even someone like Harry Lloyd who played Viserys, Daenerys's brother. The guy was just such a prick. Like, what a giant prick. Such a dickhead. And then when he winds up getting his crown, it's a very crowd pleasing moment because the guy did such a good job playing this just massive prick. Uh, Sophie Turner as Sansa, I thought she was really strong. I thought it was a really nice performance with a lot of layers and nuance. Maisie Williams, I also liked as Arya Stark. Um, Richard Madden, he was he was good too as Rob. I liked him. I would definitely say his performance was better overall than Kit Harington as John for me. Um, Alfie Allen as Theon. I felt he definitely had some good chemistry with Rob. They were a good pair. Isaac Hempstead, Wright as Bran. He was decent as well. He was kind of on my getting on my nerves at the start of the show, but I warmed up to him by the end of the season. Jack Gleeson is another performer in this that just excels at playing a prick. Just Joffrey is one of the most despicable, unlikable characters I think I've ever seen in anything, and I wanted to punt his ass into a pit of spikes. And that is the whole point of it. Like, you were supposed to feel that way about him, and the actor just nailed it. Just the arrogance and also just the psychotic madness of his character too. The audacity of Joffrey. Um Rory McCann, I want to mention, who played the Hound, because that was kind of a difficult role under a lot of makeup, and I think he definitely made it his own in a different sort of way. Aidan Gillen, who I did not like at all as the villain in Shanghai Nights, he was really good here as a slimy, shady character named Peter Baelish. Just the kind of guy who you wanted to see strung up uh, um, with a noose, or you wanted to see him have his head on a spike. Like, yeah, that guy was ooh, like he gave me Gary Oldman vibes. You know, when it comes to Gary Oldman playing these kind of similar characters, the kind of guys who are just very snide and conniving and doing stuff behind the scenes and backstabbing people back and forth, and just a really fun performance that I really enjoyed watching. I mean, this is the guy who openly is saying his plan is to fuck people. Uh, Peter Dinklage is another standout performer in this cast as Tyrion. I mean, I get it. I get why people immediately were drawn to his performance in this show right from the beginning, because this is a very compelling, very enjoyable, very fun performance to watch. And it showcases a lot of different layers and nuances for his character as well. He's got his traits too that make him very unlikable and prickish. But then there's other traits about him that make him into a more layered character, that make him into almost an anti-hero. I mean, there's a lot of fun to be had watching him interact with different people, using his sense of humor to his advantage. Uh, Also, manipulating and conniving his way, to get out of certain situations. But it was just a really good performance to watch, and it was a really terrific job by Peter Dinklage. Jason Momoa is pretty much just there for the physicality as Khal Drogo, and he's fine. He doesn't really do that much. He has a few lines of dialogue, and they're all in a different language, and he's really just there for the physicality of the character, you know, the muscles and just the intensity and so on and so forth, and he does a good job bringing that. When it comes to anything else, not really. And I don't even think he really had that much chemistry with Emilia Clarke either, but that's just me personally. I know a lot of people would disagree. And then there's just a ton of other actors and actresses who play different roles throughout the show, and play different parts in different parts of the show's landscape, in its world. And I'm not going to go through them all, but I do want to mention a few. Like, I want to mention Conleth Hill, who plays Varys, the he in a lot of ways he's similar to Peter. He's similar to Baelish. They're kind of the similar kind of characters who were like going on and doing stuff behind the scenes and being shady and being shrewd and being dishonest with other people. And this character is a little different because he's a eunuch. So he actually had his balls cut off and when he was young. Um, and so, but he has a sense of humor about it, and I just really enjoyed that performance too. He was definitely kind of chewing the scenery at points, but in a way where it worked. It wasn't too far. It was like one step before going too far and going too over the top with it. Almost reminded me a little bit of, you know, the actor who played Otho in Beetlejuice. He kind of gave me Glenn Shaddix vibes at points, which is good because I love Glenn Shaddix. Um, and then you had some other actors I want to mention real quick. Uh, David Bradley, who played Walder Frey, is a great grumpy old man. Charles Dance, Benedict. I think it was Benedict. But yeah, Charles Dance, the bad guy from The Last Action Hero, he's in this as Tywin Lannister, and it was really great to see him in a fantasy epic. Just perfect casting for that role. And some of the other people I want to Julian Glover. He's in this as Grand Meister Pycelle. So you actually have um, Donovan, you know, from The Last Crusade. He has a role in this. There's another actor. I think it's Miltos Yerlomo, who played Sirio, who was the swordsman who was training Arya. He's training her when it comes to learning how to sword fight. I really liked his performance as well. I really enjoyed him in this. It was damn shame what happened to him. I wish we could have had more of him, to be honest, because he was so good in it. Um, and there's some other people too, but like I just wanted to mention those performers because those were the main other performers that stood out the most to me. Were those characters? Um, there were some others like of course, you got Hodor, but Hodor, I mean, what can you really say about Hodor? Like, he's barely he's in it, but like, oh, Braun, that's the other one I wanted to mention. Jerome Flynn, who plays Braun. I liked him. Thought he did a really good job. And then I think John Bradley as Samwell. I wasn't super big on. I don't know, just kind of lame comic relief. Um, was it Peter Vaughn who played Master Aemon? No, it's James Cosmo who played GR. Yeah, I liked him as well. I thought he did a good job playing essentially the guy who was the head of the wall, where all the characters, all the people in the show that wound up becoming knights of the Night Watch. They were being led by him, and I definitely felt that he did a good job. But yeah, everybody did really. There's just, even the actors and actresses where I felt like, okay, their performances were kind of uneven. They still did a good job. Nobody in this did a bad job to me. I didn't see a single performance where I was like, okay, that sucked. There were just some performances that I felt were stronger than others. Now, before I get into a little bit of a rundown of the 10 episodes of the season, I want to talk about some other aspects of the show real quick. I want to talk about the production design, the art direction, the music, the costuming. All of those elements are amazing. They are excellent. They are top notch. They are tremendous. The movie legitimate. I mean, I called it a movie. The reason for that is because it looks like a movie. This does not look like a TV show. This looks like a film. This has a very great look to it, really cinematic. The direction by everybody when it comes to every episode of this, they really knew their assignment, created a show that looked every bit as epic as Lord of the Rings or any of these other major feature film fantasy films from around the same time period. So the show, it really does. It looks great. The cinematography is on another level. The editing is excellent. When it comes to every episode, the production design is just incredible. It really is awe-inspiring. So is the costuming, and even the effects are really good. Uh, there are some moments where some of the CGI maybe doesn't hold up the best, like the dragons at the end don't really look that great. But for the most part, even the visual effects held up really well. The score, though, is such a important and vital aspect of the show and why it works as well as it does. I mean, you have the opening theme, which is memorable and iconic all on its own, and then that's incorporated throughout the season in a good way. And then you have other musical notes and other parts of the score that are also utilized throughout the season. And the score initially was going to be composed by Stephen Warbeck, but then Ramin Djawadi, he wound up um, he wound up coming in and replaced him, and he just did a phenomenal job, really giving the series its own distinctive musical feel and vibe, and it was just a really strong score, and it's a big part of why the show is as epic and feels as epic and feels as grand as it ultimately does, is because of the score. Now, like I was saying earlier, this season is comprised out of 10 episodes, and most of the episodes are around an hour, and initially they were actually a little shorter. Because David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, they were used to films. They were used to writing for films. So they didn't have any experience writing for TV. So they actually had to be taken aside by HBO, and HBO was like, "Hey, you need some more runtime. You need some extra stuff. This is not long enough." And they had to put their nose to the grindstone and really come up with a lot of extra stuff, kind of pretty last minute, and they did a excellent job doing that. So that's another reason why this show is a success, is because they took on the challenge and excelled. They exceeded expectations when it comes to dealing with a show. They had never done a show before, and it definitely doesn't come across that way. That you got showrunners who have no experience with this kind of medium. The first episode is called Winter is Coming, directed by Tim Van Patten, and it's written by David Benioff and D.B. Weiss. And this is the episode that sold HBO on the show, finally. It made them realize that, okay, we're not going to cancel this. We're not going to wash our hands clean of this show. And you could just tell that everybody involved with this, they gave it their all because they knew that this was going to be their last chance. This is their last chance to make this work. And they created, in my opinion, one of the best pilot episodes or first episodes of a show that I can think of. Like, this was an incredible first episode. It was really, really good. It was very well directed by Tim Van Patten. The writing was really, really good. And it deals with an opening that just instantly hooks you into the show, because you see the Night's Watch soldiers getting attacked by the White Walkers, and it's something straight out of a horror film. It's suspenseful, it's brutal, it's all kinds of intense, and it's chilling, and it is just so good. Like, right from the beginning, you're like, whoa, I'm hooked. I have to see what is going to happen next here. It was a great idea to open up with the White Walkers, too. I felt that was a really good choice. So one soldier winds up escaping, but he gets captured at Winterfell. Ned Stark then executes him for desertion, even though he's trying to tell him that the White Walker, they're back. And of course, he's like, that you're crazy. The White Walkers been gone for thousands of years. What are you talking about? And then later on, a bunch of direwolf pups are found and given to each Stark sibling, which, seeing some husky, little baby huskies, definitely, or I think they were they wolves or they were husky, something along those lines. But seeing, little pups like that, it warms my heart because we have a husky. Our husky is named Milo, and he's the sweetest dog. He was a rescue, and like whenever I see pups like that, I definitely do brighten up because he's just such a good boy. So the Stark siblings are given their own pups, including Ned's bastard son, Jon Snow. In King's Landing, Jon Arryn, the Hand of the King, dies. King Robert Baratheon, Ned's old friend, then travels to Winterfell to get Ned to become his next Hand of the King, and to also propose a marriage between his heir Joffrey and Ned's daughter Sansa. Lisa Arryn sends her sister Catelyn, Ned's wife, a letter claiming that the Lannisters, Queen Cersei's family, murdered Arryn. Catelyn believes the Lannisters are now plotting against King Robert, which, as the show would showcase and the season would provide later on, in terms of details, she was right on the money. A lot of this episode and a lot of like the first two episodes are building things. They're building character dynamics. They're building certain plot points, but it does it in a way that's still really interesting and entertaining and compelling without being too boring. Except for episode 2, which I think is easily the weakest of this season, but even then I could still deal with it because it still has things about it that still connect with you, that are still worth watching. So, because Catelyn has her guard up, she's definitely not really 100% sure about this whole union between Joffrey and Sansa. Ned's youngest son, Bran, he winds up climbing a tall tower because he's a climber, And even though his mom was telling him, "Hey, stop climbing. It's dangerous." He doesn't want to hear any of it. And he's a kid and he's just curious and he climbs a tall tower and he winds up seeing Cersei and her twin brother Jamie getting it on. And because that is not something that they want out in the open, Jamie winds up tossing Bran out of the high window of the tower. And that's actually how the episode ends. Prior to that, there was some other stuff involving Viserys Targaryen, who was exiled, and he winds up getting his sister Daenerys to marry this Dothraki warlord named Drogo in exchange for an army to conquer Westeros and reclaim the Iron Throne. The ancient Targaryens, they once commanded dragons, and Daenerys is given 3 fossilized dragon eggs as a wedding gift. And that'll definitely come into play later on as well. But I would say out of all of the subplots in this, the White Walker stuff, the moments with Ned Stark and his family, those are definitely the strongest aspects of this pilot. But I could still get into the Daenerys and Viserys stuff. And I mean, it ends in a way that's rather shocking. I mean, a boy gets tossed out of a tower after seeing the queen involved sexually with her own brother. It's quite juicy. Uh, the second episode is called The King's Road. This one was also directed by Tim Van Patten and written by David Benioff and D.B. Weiss. And like I said, this is, in my opinion, the weakest episode of season 1. I'm getting ahead of myself there. But this is the weakest episode of season 1, but it's still fine. It's worth watching just to see just to see a Peter Dinklage and his character Tyrion smack the ever living shit out of Joffrey. Like it just pimp smacks him multiple times in this episode. Like it's worth it just for that. And of course, the nudity, because that's something that's very prevalent in this show. There's a shit ton of nudity, tits and ass, and it's pretty sexy. That's all I have to say. I mean, there's some really good, really beautiful women letting it all hang out in HD and 4K. It's definitely something to get the blood pumping. But that's not the only thing that I liked about this episode, though. But it was an episode that I wasn't super enamored with, to be perfectly honest. Ned is now officially the new Hand of the King. He travels to King's Landing with his daughters. Caitlin remains at Winterfell to care for Bran, who is unconscious, kind of clinging on to life. An assassin tries to attack Bran, but Caitlin defends him off, and Bran's direwolf winds up killing him. Caitlin suspects the Lannisters were behind the attack, which is right. She's very right to suspect that. Ned's illegitimate son, John, heads north with his uncle Benjen to join the Night's Watch, who are the protectors of the Wall, which is like this massive structure of ice that keeps the Wilding tribes and the White Walkers away from Westeros. Before departing, John gave Arya a thin sword she names the Needle. Actually, I don't think she names it Needle. Actually, I think it's John who gives the name to the sword, if I remember correctly. Queen Cersei's younger brother Tyrion, who is a dwarf known as the Imp, accompanies John to the Wall, but not before he smacks the shit out of Joffrey. Along the King's Road on their way to King's Landing, Joffrey threatens Arya's friend and then has him killed, which is just another reason why Joffrey is just such a unlikable little shit. He's just a coward too. Nymeria, Arya's direwolf, defends her, bites Joffrey. Cersei isn't having any of that, so she demands that Robert kill the wolf, but Arya releases Nymeria to the wild. Sansa's direwolf lady is then killed instead by Ned. Ned actually kills the dog himself. It's a pretty rough scene, I have to admit. In Winterfell, Bran awakens. Then you have stuff going on with Daenerys, who's then befriended by this knight named Ser Jorah, who was disgraced. And then she's trying to figure out how she can please Drogo. Um, and I also like that performance as well. It's another character I forgot to mention in when I was talking about the rest of the cast, but I definitely I definitely enjoy that actor's portrayal of that character. Um, I don't know like why is he not? I thought he was a main character. Oh, there he is, Ian Glen. Ian Glen as Jorah Mormont. Yeah, he did a really magnificent job playing that character. It's definitely one of my favorite parts of the whole stuff with Daenerys and Drogo. In fact, I liked his performance more than Jason Momoa, to be perfectly honest. One of the reasons why I wasn't super big on this second episode is it literally ends almost the same way as episode 1 did. Episode 1 ended with a cliffhanger where Bran is dropped out of a tower, and then episode 2 ends with a cliffhanger with Bran waking up. And I was like, you ended episode 1 with Bran and you ended episode 2 with Bran. That's kind of lazy. I don't like that. Thankfully, they don't do that again. The rest of the season features endings where it's not the same, that are not repeating things. It's not repetitive, and the show is a much better for that. Now, episode 3 is called Lord Snow. This one is directed by Brian Kirk, written by David Benioff and D.B. Weiss again. And this one deals with Ned. You know, he attends the small council. He learns that Westeros has been not very well managed and is in trouble. Caitlin travels to King's Landing to warn her husband about the assassination attempt, but she winds up being uh, distracted by Peter Baelish. Bran learns he would never walk again, and he also can't remember what he saw on at the tower. But he's having these dreams where it seems like it's kind of setting him up to kind of eventually remember what happened, but it doesn't actually get to that point, which I was kind of surprised by. But no, he doesn't all of a sudden remember by the end of the season. John, he's struggling at the wall because even with all his skills in terms of sword fighting and all these other things, he is not really being treated fairly. He's still being considered to be just like everybody else or worse. He's being targeted by other people. People are just randomly trying to attack him. He's got to defend himself. That puts a target on his back when it comes to the elders at the wall who, you know, have their certain ideas about him, and it's just not going well for him. The Night's Watch, they are in such bad shape that they're getting recruits that are pretty poor. They're getting convicted criminals and other people who are lowborn, and they're not impressed with John and him being a bastard. Jorah Mormont, who is the Lord Commander, he asked Tyrion to plead with the king to send more recruits to the Night's Watch. Tyrion is then leaving to King's Landing. And Daenerys, who is now pregnant, she stands up to Viserys, threatening him if he ever abuses her again, which was another crowd-pleasing moment with her and her scumbag of a brother. And then in King's Landing, Arya is starting to train with a sword. And I love the dynamic between her and her teacher. And that's when it first starts. Episode 4 is called Cripples, Bastards, and Broken Things. This one is also directed by Brian Kirk, who directed a fair amount of episodes of this season. Now that I look at it, David Benioff and DB Weiss, though, they did not write this one. It was Brian Cogman who wrote this episode. And this is another good one. This one actually has a jousting scene, which is surprisingly brutal, where a guy gets hit so hard with the joust. I forgot what the hell the name of it is. The pole. He gets hit so hard with the pole that his shield breaks and a piece of it winds up in his throat and it kills him. But you have some stuff involving Tyrion, who, while he's returning to King's Landing, he stops at Winterfell where he presents to Starks a saddle design that will allow Bran to ride a horse, which is really cool and really nice of him to do. Another reason why Tyrion is not necessarily like the worst guy. He's definitely not the most trustworthy guy, but he definitely seems like somebody who has like more of a heart and a soul than half of his family does. That's for sure. So Ned then decides to do his own investigating when it comes to what happened to Aaron. In the process, he discovers that one of King Robert's illegitimate children, is an armorer named Gendry. And he says to him, "Hey, if you ever change your mind in terms of wanting to work for this armorer, let me know. I would like to have you as a part of my um, team, so to speak." Well, it's not really his team, but like he would like to have him for his own so he could train him, maybe have him be involved in the joust and, maybe be his own armorer, stuff like that. Robert and his guests attend a tournament honoring Ned, which is the jousting, which it gets insanely brutal. John takes measures to protect Samwell, an awkward, fat, new recruit, who I just thought was kind of annoying, to be perfectly honest, but not in a way where I was like, oh, I hate this character, but just in a way where I'm just very indifferent on him. I didn't really think he really added that much, but that's just me. Frustrated Viserys clashes with his sister. Sansa dreams of one day becoming queen, while Arya has a vision of something completely different. Caitlyn, who is Lord Hoster Tully's daughter, she winds up unexpectedly encountering Tyrion, and then she winds up arresting Tyrion or Tyrion. I'm sorry. I'm probably gonna butcher his name and a bunch of other names to the show like numerous times throughout this video. My apologies. But she arrests him for murder, for conspiring to murder Bran, and then that's the end of that episode. Pretty good cliffhanger as well. I'll say my favorite part of that episode though was the joust. Um, Episode 5 is called The Wolf and the Lion, also directed by Brian Kirk, also written by David Benioff and DB Weiss, like most of this season. This is where you have more stuff involving Varys, the Enoch, and then you have Daenerys Targaryen and her pregnancy. Ned, he refuses to go along with Robert's plan to assassinate Daenerys because he doesn't consider Daenerys a threat, and that causes some issues between him and Robert because Robert wants all the Targaryens dead because of what happened, because the Targaryens wound up kidnapping Ned's sister, who Robert was in love with, and her, I mean, she, Ned's sister, wound up becoming ultimately killed by the Targaryens. So Robert has this unquenchable thirst for vengeance in regards to that and wants all the Targaryens killed. And he hears that she's going to bear a son, and she's married Drogo, and he fears that she's going to lead the Dothraki army to attack his kingdom and Of course, because of his grudge with the Targaryens, he's not able to think clearly. But Ned is not having any of it, and this leads to Ned resigning as Robert's hand, which pisses Robert off even more. Catelyn and her prisoner, Tyrion, they arrive at her sister's fortress home in Erie, and I like the idea of the jails at this fortress being out in the open. So they throw you in this jail, but then like it's all open and it's on the side of a cliff. So if you take one wrong move in the middle of the night, you will just fall to your death off the side of a cliff. Um, a different way to set up claustrophobia, really, because in a lot of ways it's an open space, but it's still very claustrophobic because you can't go anywhere. You can't go that far because, and you're still trapped, even though there's all this open space because you're on the side of a cliff. And the whole stuff with Aaron and her son was pure chaos. The son was just an absolutely psychotic little shit, but he was so crazy in a way that it was fun to watch. This kid just being like, I want to see somebody fly. That he was just so out there. The kid was already a nut job. He was already screwed in the head. I mean, he was like what, 5 or 6 or 8? It seemed like he was 8 or 10 years old, and he's still sucking off his mom's teat. Like the kid was just an absolute menace. And Tyrion decides to set. But actually, I think it was it the next episode when, yeah, he does that in the next episode. But Tyrion, he is, captured, and news of Tyrion's capture reaches King's Landing, where Jaime Lannister, the Queen's twin brother, demands answers from Ned. Jaime, who is understandably pissed off, he orders Ned's men to be killed, and then he fights Ned in hand-to-hand combat. And he's intending to fight him to the death, but then one of Jaime's men stabs Ned in the leg from behind and wounds him, and that ends the fight. And that's the end of that episode. I really like the confrontation between Jaime and Ned at the end of this episode. Um, a lot of good drama in this, and some good action as well. Episode 6 is called A Golden Crown, and this one is directed by Daniel Minihan, features a teleplay by David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, as well as Jane Eppenson. And this is honestly one of my favorite episodes of this season. I really enjoyed this episode. It's got a really good pace to it. I think it's actually the shortest episode of this season, if I remember correctly. And this one deals with Robert giving Ned his job back as Hand of the King, and allowing Ned to essentially be king, run the king's affairs until Robert returns from a hunting trip. During the king's leave of absence, a bunch of villagers from River Run, they show up and talk about how these raiders came in and pillaged and raped and just completely destroyed their village. And Ned deduces that these were raiders that were led by Gregor Clegane, who is known as the Mountain, the same guy who killed one of the knights during the jousting competition. And Ned sentences the Mountain to death and then summons Tywin Lannister to a trial. Ned decides to send Sansa, who is now reconciled with Joffrey, and his other daughter Ira back to Winterfell because he doesn't feel that it's safe here anymore. Of course, Sansa's not having any of that. She's upset. Ira is also upset because she wants to train with the swordsmen. In fact, she's trying to get Ned to bring the swordsmen with them, but he refuses. Sansa and her whole thing here, I don't really like that much. Her character changes way too quickly at this point. Even prior to that, like in the previous episode where she swoons over Joffrey as soon as he shows up with a necklace and gives her a kiss and calls her his lady, I felt it was a little forced. Not a little, it was really forced when it comes to the way that her character just completely shifted on a dime. Because prior to that, she was very untrusting of Joffrey. She was upset at him because he was really treating her poorly, looking at her with disgust or just ignoring her entirely. And then he does the whole thing where he winds up hurting her and he kills one of her colleagues and has the butcher's boy killed because he got shown up because he's a punk, and then her dog winds up getting killed too. Like she just forgot all about that and got puppy dog eyes as soon as Joffrey was like, "Oh, I like you," and then she's like, "Oh, forget all about all of that. I love you too. I've always liked you, Joffrey. You're so cute. I love you. I want to be your queen. I want to have your babies." Like it just felt like it was just warp speed when it comes to her character. So maybe that's how it is with young love and whatever, but it just felt like it was out of character for her though, compared to what had really seen from Sansa. So that just felt like way too quick of a transition for her. Have her, I don't know, I haven't, here's an idea. She plays hard to get with Joffrey. Or she's more reluctant after, he meets up with her and she's like, "What, you expect me to just fall in your arms after everything that happened?" Is a well, I like you. I wanna make amends, and I got this necklace, and I'm trying to be nice to you and everything. And she's like, it's gonna take a lot more than that. But no, that's not what happens. She just swoons for him and falls for him, and it honestly makes me really start to dislike her as a character. Just how quickly she falls for him. It falls for the absolute bullshit that the Lannisters are peddling and pushing to her. Uh, so yeah, Ned's like, "All right, we gotta leave." His daughters don't want to do it. Um, then you have Brand. He winds up getting his new saddle. He tests it out, but he winds up going too far into the woods. Gets attacked by some wildings. His brother and some other people wind up rescuing him. In the process, though, they wind up taking one of the women named Osha as their slave. But the best parts of this episode are really the stuff involving the Veil. There are still some other good stuff as well. Um, like the whole investigation that Ned makes, where he discovers with his own eyes that Joffrey and his two siblings are not Robert's biological children, and they were actually fathered by Jaime Lannister. And that's all good and well, but the best parts are the stuff at the Vale, where Tyrion, he demands a trial by combat, but that's after he hilariously confesses. So he confesses his crimes in the most hilarious way possible. He's just over the top. It's just a stand-up routine where he's just talking about all these horrible crimes that he did ever since he was a kid, and each one is more outlandish than the last, and it is a riot. It honestly reminded me of the scene in the Goonies where Chunk is asked to tell the Fratellis everything. It's like, "All right, around to I'll tell you everything. I'll tell you everything." And then he talks about all the screwed up stuff that he did since he was a kid, the whole movie theater story. When everybody started puking and they started throwing up on each other, and it was horrible. It was so, that was just an iconic, classic bit of comedy from that movie. And anytime a comedic bit can remind you of that, you've got a really good script. You did a great job. But it doesn't stop there because when Tyrion gets his trial by combat, he gets a volunteer named Braun who decides to be his champion. Lyssa chooses Egan, and then they have this fight, and it's honestly really exciting and fun to watch. And of course, you have Lyssa and her crazy ass, then you have her crazy kid, and it's just a really enjoyable, fun sequence to watch unfold. And it ends rather unpredictably because Tyrion actually wins. His champion wins. Braun wins. He defeats Vardis. He obtains Tyrion's release. And then you have this stuff with the Drogo and Daenerys and her brother. And that's also really good because Viserys, he just winds up losing his damn mind because he's seeing how Daenerys is getting more and more powerful. She's Khaleesi. She's really growing apart from him. She's getting more and more confident, and he sees that she's really getting a lot of power within the Dothraki, and she's starting to get more power over them than he is, and he's pissed off and he wants his crown because that's what he was promised, and he threatens Daenerys. He threatens to kill her unborn child, and that sets Drogo off, and he has had enough of Viserys, so he winds up giving him his golden crown by melting a bunch of gold and then pouring it on top of his head. And it's a insanely crowd pleasing moment. It's brutal, and it's definitely a pretty awful way for somebody to die. But Viserys, he definitely deserved that, and then some. And that's how that episode ends in a very satisfying fashion. Just a gem of an episode, if you ask me. Episode 7 is called You Win or You Die, and this one is directed by Daniel Minahan, also written by Benioff and D.B. Weiss. And this is where things really start to go sideways. Ned confronts Cersei, tells her that he knows that Jaime fathered her children, and he's going to inform King Robert, which was incredibly stupid of him to do. You don't let your enemy know that you know their secrets to their face. That is incredibly daft and idiotic. Robert is critically wounded while hunting a boar. As Robert lies dying, he signs a proclamation naming Ned the Protector of the Realm until Joffrey can assume the throne. Ned amends the wording to say that the king's rightful heir. Ned sends the word to Stannis, Robert's brother, the legal heir to the throne. Ned asks Peter to secure the city watch's loyalty, but you can't trust Peter because he just wants to fuck everybody, and that's exactly what he winds up doing. After Robert's death, Ned confronts Cersei and Joffrey in the throne room, where Baelish and the City Watch betray Ned and attack his men, and they arrest Ned. In fact, Cersei just tears up the piece of paper that her husband wrote before he died. It's like, what do you think this is something? This is fucking nothing. Tear this shit up. It doesn't mean anything. The real king is my son. Which I'm like, why would you have what is he like 10, 12? Like he's a boy. This boy was getting pimp smacked earlier by Tyrion, by a little person. And now he's the king. That's one thing I found kind of ridiculous when it comes to this season and the show to a certain point. I understand, yes, he is a Lannister and the queen has a certain power, and there's a certain lineage, and everybody follows suit, but come on, like he's a boy. Like why isn't some why it seemed like it would be way too easy to just, oops, sorry, Joffrey. I guess you just didn't quite make it there. You walked a little bit too close to the edge. In fact, I mean, he almost got shoved off the edge of the castle by Sansa later on in the season, but she wasn't quick enough. But I'm just like really? it's kind of hard to look at him and be like, that's my king. More be like, what the fuck? Who the hell is this little shit? How is he gonna inspire anybody other than like his demands, other than his brutality? That's the only way that he's able to actually get people to do his bidding or take him seriously. Because otherwise, nobody would take his ass seriously. How is he gonna do in battle? I'm really curious to see that going forward. If he actually winds up in a battle, like how is anybody going to take him seriously if he's going to lead his men into battle? Uh, I just it just seems like one of those things where yeah, he basically is a figurehead for his mom, but like at the same time, it's like why she could have just taken the throne herself, couldn't she? Because she'd be like, I'm gonna take the throne now. It's my throne. Like I don't know why, but hey, you wouldn't have, this just massive asshole in King Joffrey if you didn't have it that way. But I'd have to admit, when it happened, I was just kind of like, really? Okay, all right. So Joffrey is king now, and Ned is arrested. Uh, at the wall, Benjen disappears. John and Sam are assigned as stewards, which upsets John because he's like, "What the hell? I should be a ranger," and he's right. Sam points out that the commander Mormont likely intends to groom him for command, and that's why. I mean, maybe, but there's no guarantee that that's really the plan. But okay, the stewards swear their loyalties in the Night's Watch, and Essos, King's Robert's hired assassin. He winds up being exposed by Ser Jorah before he can poison Daenerys because before Robert died, he gave Ned permission to try to stop that from happening. Uh, but Ser Jorah takes care of it. Drogo then vows to conquer the Seven Kingdoms for his unborn son, and he starts marching towards Westeros. Ser Jorah, it seems like he was also given a piece of paper that would insinuate that he would be the one to kill her for a pardon, but he ignores it, which is a good bit of character growth for his character. Um, Still a good episode. This is definitely when things start to go very sideways, because this is where the Lannisters complete their takeover plot, and it just gets worse from there. Because then you get episode 8, which is called The Pointy End. This one is also directed by Daniel Minahan, written by George R. R. Martin. And Arya, she escapes the Red Keep after Syrio, her sword master, fends off the guards sent to arrest her, and he dies heroically, allowing her to escape. Sansa is captured. Robb hears the news and prepares the North to fight the Lannisters, leaving Bran behind to rule Winterfell. Lisa refuses to fight the Lannisters. Caitlyn leaves to join Robb's camp. Tyrion and Bronn are surrounded by Shagga, the leader of the Stonecrows tribe. Tyrion convinces them to escort him to his father Tywin, who will pay them. At the camp, Tywin asks Shagga to help them confront the Starks in exchange for a greater payment. That's where you get a lot of. This is the episode where you get a lot of Charles Dance, which is definitely something that is a major plus because he's a great actor and I love him. And he actually learned how to cut the carcass of it's like a stag. He actually learned how to do that himself. So he's actually doing the real way that you would cut up a stag in that particular sequence when he's talking to Tyrion. At the wall, some bodies actually got affected by the White Walkers and they actually awake. One of them awakes and attacks Mormont, but Jon kills it. And Essos Drogo's soldiers begin attacking nearby settlements. They are trying to enslave the locals in order to in order to use them to raise money to buy ships so they could cross the sea. Drogo winds up getting wounded in a fight. Joffrey appoints his grandfather Tywin as a hand of the king. Sansa begs Joffrey to show Ned mercy, but knowing who, Joffrey is, there's no way that's going to end well. So Sansa is a fool. Joffrey agrees if Ned publicly recognizes Joffrey's claim to the throne and admits to committing treason. And you just have a very sneaking suspicion that this is just not going to end well. And it does not. Because in episode 9, Baylor, directed by Alan Taylor, written by David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, the Stark army arrives at the twins' castle. Caitlin persuades Frey to allow them to pass through his land and assist them in exchange for Robb and Arya marrying 2 of his offspring in the future. At the wall, Jorah Mormont gives his family a Valyrian steel sword to Jon in gratitude. Mr. Aemon reveals to Jon that Aemon is a Targaryen, which is a pretty interesting, cool bit of development for sure. In Essos, Drogo's wound becomes septic and his death is imminent. Daenerys asks a slave woman who's a mystic to use blood magic. Of course, whenever you use blood magic, it's not going to really end well for you. Miri tells everyone to remain outside until after the spell is cast. Daenerys then goes into labor. Jorah brings her into the tent. Robb sacrifices 2,000 soldiers to fight the Lannister army as a diversion so we can capture Jaime Lannister. In a public hearing, Ned confesses to treason and publicly affirms that Joffrey is a rightful heir. And also, prior to this moment with Ned going up to the public and admitting to treason and so on and so forth, you do have some stuff with Tyrion and this whore and Bronn, and there's just a nice bit of character building between Tyrion and Bronn. You get to know about their backstory when they play a fun drinking game, and it's another one of my favorite scenes of this season, to be perfectly honest. Now, it can't be all fun and games though, because the end of the episode is pretty intense and pretty sad. Because Ned confesses to treason and public affirms that Joffrey is the rightful heir, but because Joffrey is a little shit, he's not willing to show mercy, and instead he orders Ned to be beheaded. And the episode ends with Ned getting his head cut off. You don't see it, cuts to black, but it's effective enough. And I'm like, I should have seen this coming because it's Sean Bean and anything he's in, he's going to die. But at the same time, I'm like, man, that sucks. Because I did like his character and I definitely felt he deserved a better end than that. But, you know, it is what it is. And at the same time, it was just not going to end well. You just had this feeling that it was not going to end well for him, that he was just going to get screwed over somehow, some way or another. And ultimately, that's what happened. Episode 10, the finale, is called Fire and Blood. It's also directed by Alan Taylor and written by Benioff and D.B. Weiss, and it's one hell of a finale. It does a great job hooking you in for the next season, setting up all of the upcoming plot beats and different sort of things to look for season 2, while also winding up, filling in some of the loose ends for this season. The North secedes from the Seven Kingdoms, proclaims Robb as their king. Jaime is the Stark's prisoner, and Stannis and Renly decide to challenge Joffrey's claim to the throne. Tywin appoints Tyrion as the king's hand, while Tywin fights to defend Joffrey's reign. Jon attempts to desert the Night's Watch to avenge Ned and join Robb, but the Night's Watch brothers convince him to honor his oath. Jon joins an expedition to search for Benjen beyond the wall. Yoren, a Night's Watch recruiter, smuggles Arya out of the King's Landing disguised as a boy, while Joffrey intends to crown Sansa as queen despite executing her father. Daenerys' baby is born deformed and dead. Drogo is left in a vegetative state by the blood magic. It's just not going to. Don't do blood magic, folks. Daenerys compassionately ends Drogo's life. She then places the 3 dragon eggs on Drogo's funeral pyre and sets it ablaze. burns Emilia alive in the process. Ignoring Jorah's pleas, she winds up walking into the flames herself, which you know is not really going to do anything because they already set that up earlier when she grabbed some hot dragon's eggs that were left in a fire and she wasn't burned. But it was still quite the image of her walking into the fire. When the embers die off the following morning, Daenerys is found in the ashes, completely naked, unharmed, and flanked by 3 baby dragons that have now hatched. And then Jorah and the other witnesses then kneel before her. And that is the finale, and that is the ending of season 1 of Game of Thrones. It's a pretty cool ending too. I mean, ending with the dragons being born. Uh, so yeah, uh, season 1 was really good. I liked it quite a bit. I would say it's one of the best first seasons of a fantasy show that I've seen. I would definitely rank it pretty high up there too when it comes to like first seasons of a television show in general. So, yeah, that was quite the spectacle, and I'm looking forward to season 2. And honestly, I'm curious to see how this show is gonna fall off a cliff too, as well. Now I'm curious. Now I'm curious to see how they fuck it up. I got a bit to wait until that point, but I have to admit I'm curious to see how they mess this up because um, this is a show that I get it. I get it now. I understand why people were obsessed with this show because this is really good. I really liked it. But anyway, thanks for watching my review of season 1 of Game of Thrones. As always, I'll see you later. See ya.